Hello and welcome to Getting Your Money's Worth, the show that focuses on value. I'm Judith West, and we're very privileged today to have as our guest Mr. Eugene Lang, founder of the I Have a Dream Foundation. Hello, and thank you for being on the show. It's an honor. I have to say, we've had many firsts as guests on this show, but I think you're the first that ever got the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So thank you, congratulations on that. Mr. Lang, some 25 years ago or so, you were at a 6th grade graduation, and while you were preparing to give your speech, you got an inspiration. Can you tell us briefly about that?
I don't know quite where to begin, but let me say I'll skip all of the prologue and say when I went to the podium at PS 121 in East Harlem, where I had graduated, I guess, some 27 years previously. No, more than that. It was 47 years previously.
That's okay. You don't have to tell us on the air.
I really didn't know quite what to say, which is unusual for me. And as I was walking to the podium, I thought, what am I going to say to these children? I remembered the occasion when I heard Martin Luther King in Washington tell the world he had a dream. And that seemed to me to be a very good theme to take off on, because the dream, to make any dream possible, requires education.
Right.
And I told the children, this is your first commencement, and that's very significant, and from here you're going to go on, and it's important that you stay in school and get educated, and you're going to graduate next from middle school, and from high school, and then you will be graduating from college. And as I said that, I also realized that most of these children weren't going to go to college and perhaps had no thought of it, and particularly since the virtually, I'd say, 90% of the parents in the auditorium did not even speak English.
Right.
And probably didn't have much of a perception of what I was talking about when I talked about college. And I don't mean that in a mean way.
This is what you
well, that's the way it was
exactly.
At that time, and to some extent still is.
Exactly.
And I
so
said,
you did more than just talk to them, though. That moved you to take some action.
Well, I simply said, well, no, I don't want any of you to think for 1 minute that you can't go to college, because right now, as a graduation present, I promise each of you, as you continue school, when you graduate high school, I will make sure that you are able to go to college by providing scholarship funds that you can go.
So at that moment in time, you promised the number of graduates, whatever it was in the class, that their college education paid for if they worked towards staying in school, graduating high school, and getting there.
That's right.
And that was the genesis. That was the beginning of I Have a Dream.
And that was the genesis.
You know, what you did...
The follow-up, though, let me say to you, if you want to have a perception of what the program is,
yes,
had really very little to do with my promise, because when the program was over and the principal came over to me and he congratulated me, saying that was a wonderful thing you did, I said, well, thank you very much. He said, but you don't have to worry. He says, maybe 1 or 2 of those children will get to college, so it's not going to cost you a lot.
Oh.
Well, that really bothered me.
Sure.
I said, so you're reducing my promise to another gesture of some person walking by and trying to be a hero. I remember the first time I met with the kids, the school even did not give me audience after I had a little to-do with the president, because I was irritated by his attitude. I said, when I said I'm going to figure out how to keep them in school, he said, I'll help you do this. I'll prepare a plan and tell you what it costs. And I said, well, you know, I'm outraged by you saying this. If you know how to do it, why do you tolerate that here now?
Why?
And that did not make him a friend. And as a result, the school was denied to me. I had to get from the vice principal the names and addresses of all the children. I wrote each one a letter and arranged we would have a big meeting at the local settlement house. That was a wonderful person, and if you ever want to interview somebody that really is Dorothy Stoneman, you may have heard her name. She was the one that had the youth action program there, gave us the house. She now has developed Youth Build, which is all over the country.
So you had to really fight the bureaucracy from the get-go.
Well, I wasn't fighting anybody because nobody was fighting me.
Okay.
I just had to do what I did because nobody would interfere.
And you got to the point where, which I think is a marvelous concept, you got to the point where this mentorship program got so fully developed.
Well, let me tell you that our program differs because essentially it represents an implementation of 4 basic adjectives.
Okay.
It's as simple as that.
And they are?
1, it's personal.
Personal, okay.
Each child is important, and you stay with the child. 2, it's caring.
Caring.
They care. 3rd, it's inclusionary. You keep all the children together for all the years, so you have your role models, you have your interaction, you have the fact that as a group, the role models of the class become the leaders, and they sort of cultivate the inspiration that makes it all work.
Okay.
And the last thing, and terribly important, it's sustained. You start with money. I did it at a graduation of the 6th grade. Our program now starts as early as the 1st grade, but never less than the 3rd.
Wow.
And this is the thing. Those 4 adjectives and the
personal,
format the
caring,
same.
Inclusion, and sustain.
That's correct.
Right.
And that, if you just check those adjectives against all the other programs, government programs, whatever you say, those are the things. Every one of those adjectives is significant because you relate that, if you know children, you relate the significance of those adjectives to what a child needs to inspire, to encourage, and make it possible for them to go all the way.
How did you develop this core of people that did that? I mean, it's clear that those 4 adjectives, no one could debate it, but yet there has to be a person that's doing it.
The answer to your question, we developed it with difficulty and experience. A lot of people and friends volunteered. Teachers volunteered. I even got help from the teachers' union. People, if they're given the opportunity, as Aristotle said, are more than social animals. They're good, and there's nothing to attract the goodness in people than just a child
a kid
that is responsive.
Exactly.
And our children became responsive. They really took it seriously. I wasn't a rich guy walking through the crowd there and buying him sneakers and saying goodbye.
Right.
It took a while. It took years to convince them of my good faith that I really meant it.
They trusted you.
And that didn't happen overnight.
You built the trust.
That did not happen overnight. And this is really the secret. This is really the secret of our program.
Did you get parents involved,
Very
Mr.
much.
Lang? How did you get the parents? How did you get parents involved?
As much as you could. It was very erratic.
Right.
Some parents were just wonderful, and some parents were very remote. But then, of course, the biggest problem is there were those with no parents or single parents or a diversified family.
And maybe there's some kind of a surrogate caretaker.
That's right. And so what you really had to do is be sufficiently malleable. Your program and the relationship had to be sufficiently malleable so you could adjust to the circumstances of a child. How do you prepare yourself to deal with a child who comes to you? And I remember the first time a girl came to me. It was on a Saturday morning, and she said, "Mr. Lang, I'm pregnant. What shall I do?"
What did you tell her, for heaven's sake? I would have, you must have had a gulp hard.
I was really, what do I say to them? And I can remember, the conversation as I was stumbling to figure out what I could say. I said, well, you know, that's something that I really can't say that I can answer you very, very well. But I know it's a serious, it's a problem that you have to deal with. And she said, well, you know, I dropped out of school. I said, yes, I know. That's why I wanted to see you.
I think I want to get this point across, not to interrupt you, that you provided a trust relationship,
That's
someone
right.
to come and talk to you. And I just want to say, we only a couple of minutes left, we had one of your dreamers on the show before, and I asked him, what is the most important thing that you have learned? And that was the first thing he said. I have someone I can talk to, and I have learned that if I make a mistake, I talk about my mistake and how I can change it. And that issue really is what builds character the best.
Well, there's one other important point there, and that is generally speaking, a person like myself who becomes part of the program, and nobody does it alone. Nobody does it alone. The fact is, we become the only person probably in the child's life who has access to power. And you think about it.
Right.
And let me just elaborate a bit on the conversation I had.
You become an advocate.
Well, I become more than an advocate. Let me tell you, finish the story, and you cut it if you like.
Okay.
And that is, this girl told me she was pregnant and she didn't want to see the priest. I said, well, I can arrange, if you like, the Planned Parenthood. She said, I don't want to talk to no organization. I said, well, look. I said, you can either have your child or you don't have the child. Let me just tell you two things. Number one, if you have your child, I'm not going away. I'm always going to be with you. And number two, your child will also go to college. And and I said, just remember, you will always be my dreamer. And she started to cry, and she came up and threw her arms around me. I can tell you, that was a defining experience in my life. And I can tell you that anybody with my situation in life who had the experience of the reaction of that child to what I said, you were committed for life.
You get committed. Wow.
Even to this day, it's an emotional experience for me when I think of that.
Wow.
But that's really the thing. What I did was, I said, call me on Monday. She said she had dropped out of school because she knew she couldn't graduate unless she got a certificate in physical training, and with a baby she couldn't do that. And number two, she said she would not now be able to graduate with her class because she had dropped out and the class had moved on. I said, call me on Monday. And I called the principal on Monday. And this is where you say access to power.
Exactly.
I called the principal, and she said, well, certainly we can waive the physical training. I said, well, what about going to graduating with a class? She said, well, we have schools in New York where they can make up the lost time and where she can catch up and graduate. Well, that's what happened.
So last year, provided a lifeline for her.
And last year, I attended the graduation of that daughter she had at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Right. But more than that, when you consider the analog between what would have been welfare, child, and mother, and what happened, this girl right now is the manager of a mortgage department of a New York City bank.
Right. That's a wonderful story, and you're right. You finished that story because there's no better way to explain the heart of your program. Thank you so much for being with us. You are an inspiration to all of us, and I can't give you a Medal of Honor, but I can say thank you very much for sharing your story with us, and it's a story that all Americans can be very proud of.
Well, if this story can attract, after they hear you on the program, more people to come and become part of the I Have a Dream program, this will have been
we'll do our best. You're watching Getting Your Money's Worth. I'm Judith West. Our guest, Eugene Lang, has just described the American Dream story. Thank you for watching.